March is Women's History Month, and what a better fitting time than to honor today's inductees. These women will go down in history, along with all the previous honorees. Julia Clukey, the founder of a girls' camp which teaches self-confidence and goal setting, and Cornelia Crosby, a role model for young women in the outdoor realm. We will hear more about these wonderful women a little later. I'm afraid we had to say goodbye to Don Collins, the husband of Patricia Collins, a previous inductee. Our condolences go out to the family. So again, I welcome you to the 29th Annual Maine Women's Hall of Fame.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Wyke, and I am the president here at the University of Maine at Augusta, and it is absolutely my pleasure to welcome you here to UMA today. We are a proud co-sponsor of the Maine Women's Hall of Fame, and fittingly so, because about 70% of our students are women, many of them single moms raising children and hoping for a better life for themselves and their families. Like the Maine Women's Hall of Fame, not only do we honor women, but we also have a statewide impact with 2 campuses and 8 centers around the state. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Futurama Foundation for providing the BPW University of Maine at Augusta scholarship, which is awarded annually to a single female parent enrolled here at UMA. Again, it is a pleasure to welcome you all here today, and I look forward to meeting the honoree and the other honorees' family. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, and I'll want to add my welcome to everybody else's. So glad you could join us. My name is Linda Huff. I'm a trustee on the Futurama Foundation board, and I'm also co-chair of this year's Maine Women's Hall of Fame. I'm pleased to lead this section of our program, which focuses on the first of our 2018 inductees, Julia Clukey. And she's an award-winning Olympian athlete, community activist, and a tireless advocate for the empowerment of Maine girls by creating opportunities and life-changing experiences for them. And she was nominated for this award by Romaine Turn. Now I'd like to introduce Michelle Michoud from the U.S. Office of Senator Susan Collins, and she's going to be reading letters for both of our inductees, and she'll be followed by Scott Wilkinson, the regional representative for the office of Senator Angus King, excuse me. So first of all, Michelle.
Thank you so much. Well, it's an honor to be here today to represent Senator Susan Collins, who is herself a member of the Maine Women's Hall of Fame and the only mother-daughter team to be in the Women's Hall of Fame. I was actually with the senator and her mom yesterday at Dawn's funeral. It was amazing, and I appreciate you mentioning that today. But we are here to recognize 2 women into the Hall of Fame this year, and I am delighted to read remarks from Senator Collins and present letters on her behalf. And so she writes, Dear Julia, congratulations on being inducted into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. The positive impact you have had on your community through your leadership and service cannot be measured, whether as an Olympian athlete, a public speaker, as director of your summer camp. You have dedicated yourself to empowering our next generation of women. Your positive attitude, enthusiasm, and determination have led to your success, making you an inspiring role model for young women across our state. I commend you for all you have done for Maine, and I join your family, friends, and colleagues in applauding this well-deserved recognition. Congratulations again, and best wishes for your continued success. Sincerely, Susan M. Collins, United States Senator. Congratulations. And then, while I'm here at the podium, I'm going to read the next letter from Senator Collins. And this says, Dear Bill, but I'm going to say, Dear friends. Congratulations on the induction of the late Cornelia Thurza Crosby into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. The impact that Fly Rod Crosby had on her community throughout her many years of service cannot be measured. As Maine's first registered guide and avid spokeswoman for Maine, Cornelia continues to serve as an inspiring role model for young leaders across our state. I commend Cornelia for all she has done for Maine and applaud her for this well-deserved and maybe a little bit late recognition. Once again, congratulations, sincerely, Susan M. Collins, United States Senator. Bill, where did you go?
Okay. Well, can we see about getting the name changed to this nice young lady, Emily? She's a descendant. Isn't that terrific? I just wrote the application.
You can do that.
Could we do that? Thank you very
I
much.
can take it back and
Thank you so much. I'm not refusing.
No,
I want to see Emily have it for the family.
but I will talk to them.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here with you today. It's a real honor to share some words from Senator King. The Women's Hall of Fame, the list of people flipping through the program that have preceded and gone into this Hall of Fame is really remarkable. And I think that the current inductees live up to that expectation and that standard. I think it's really important for young women, girls, to be able to look up and have role models and representation. Growing up as a young boy, I think it's just as important for young men to see that representation and see what women can do. I grew up in the Augusta area and went to Coney, and Julia Clukey was a legend that I heard about growing up. The Olympian that went to my high school, very cool. So here are remarks from Senator King, congratulatory remarks. First for Julia. Dear Julia, congratulations on being inducted into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. I'm honored to join your family, friends, and community in celebration of your contributions and this well-deserved honor. With this achievement, you're joining an elite group of remarkable women who have undoubtedly inspired countless people in Maine and across the country. First as an Olympian, and now through your philanthropic efforts, you demonstrate extraordinary work ethic, commitment, and excellence in all that you do. Through your summer camp program and goal-setting presentations, you continue to make positive impacts on the lives of our future female leaders all over the state. Thank you for being such an outstanding leader and great representative for Maine. Best regards, Angus. And secondly, Bill, I'm going to have to rename the letter as well. Was it Emily? Emily, thanks so much. From Senator King. I was pleased to hear of Cornelia Fly Rod Crosby's induction into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. I'm honored to join her family, friends, and community in the celebration of her contributions and this well-deserved honor. Cornelia was indeed a pioneer. Through her tireless efforts, she became an outstanding leader for Maine and a role model for women both in her time and today. With accolades like being Maine's first hunting guide and a nationally known columnist, she shared her passion for outdoor recreation with people across the country and has undoubtedly made a positive impact on the history of our great state. Her legacy of promoting conservation and education has solidified the tradition of Maine's greatest resources for generations to come. We're proud to call her one of our own. Best regards, Angus. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Michelle and Scott. We also have letters for both of the inductees, their representatives, from Governor Paul LePage, Representative Shelley Pingree, and Representative Bruce Pollockman. I now have the pleasure of introducing the moderator for this part of the program, Amelia Clukey. And she is the sister of our inductee, Julia.
All right, thank you very much, Linda. I am here to introduce two young women who I've had the privilege of knowing for quite a few years now through Julia's camp that she runs. Gabby Cienko from 8th grade. She's in 8th grade at Messalonsky Middle School, and Savannah Green, a senior at Gardner High School. Okay, hello, my name is Savannah Green, as you just heard. And I'm going to talk a little bit, this is going to get a little personal, but I promise it won't be that personal for too long. So, for the first 11 years of my life, I had thought that I was handed the wrong hand of cards from birth. My parents divorced when I was barely 5 years old. Unable to comprehend the complexity and toxicity of the situation, I watched my parents go through nasty custody battles, which typically ended with my mother in the hospital and my father taking care of me. Through all of that, I had many questions about what was going to happen in my life. Consistently, I was given two answers. The first being a picture book that showed what happened when two dinosaur parents got divorced. The book assured me that my parents still loved me the same and that everything was going to be okay. The second answer was, it's an adult issue, don't worry about it. Eventually, I stopped asking questions and let whatever happened happen because I was tired of never getting a real answer. My apologies. When everything did seem to finally calm down between my parents, my father met his wife. She put her children and I through years of physical and emotional abuse. During this period, I was trained to yet again not ask questions. If I ever asked questions about why I was being punished, it was answered with a harsh blow by whatever object was nearby. By the age of 10, I felt as though I'd lost my voice. Keep your head down, keep your voice down, don't do anything that will get you in trouble. I was in survival mode. Even after my mother had saved me from that horrific situation, I had the hardest time learning how to speak up for myself or others. During my 6th grade year, one of my best friends asked me if I wanted to go to a day camp with her, called Julia Clukey's Camp for Girls. I'd asked her what the camp was, and she said it was like the overnight YMCA camp we went to every summer. Oh, was she wrong? Excited for another adventure with my best friend, I happily attended the camp with her. During the day, we'd have plenty of outdoor activities to participate in, just like any other camp. However, midday, we had a little over an hour called Julia time. We talked about ways to lift our self-esteem and how to lift each other up instead of tearing each other down, as well as how not to compare our bodies to those in the media. These lessons were crucial to not only me, but all the other campers that were sitting alongside me. At this camp, I learned how to be my own person. I learned that because I am a woman, I can be strong. I learned that I am strong. I found my voice again. Since my last year at Julia's camp, I have achieved so much. In school, I've created and run 3 successful clubs, as well as create a sign language course. Outside of school, I've been recognized by Boston Magazine as a young trailblazer, as well as recognized by a national organization for my work in LGBTQ+ advocacy, and by the University of Rochester. However, all of this would not be possible without amazing women like Julia. She is someone I will always look up to and credit for helping me rediscover my voice. My role model and my superhero, Julia has shown me and many other young women that gender is never a barrier for success.
So my name is Gabrielle Senko. I am in 8th grade. Last year was my last year, and I sadly did not attend, but I gladly went for 3 years of my life. I would definitely say those 3 years of my life were probably one of the most important, because every year, through any problems that I had at school or any difficulties that I had with being a young woman and just being in this world with so many other people, I always had that enjoyment of looking forward to summer, the beginning of summer, of going and being with Julia and all my friends that didn't go to my school. The camp, Julia Clukey's camp, I'm honestly a little speechless, because it did so much for me. It taught me to be confident. It taught me to be more also aware, I am beautiful. I shouldn't compare myself. I don't have any speech or anything. This is all coming from my heart, because Julia has a very special place in my heart, not just because of the camp, but just because of the person she is and just how amazing it is. And just being able to meet her, be friends with her, and to be able to look up with her is just such an honor to me. And I've never been through anything too hard like Savannah. And so it's just amazing being able to have that. It's just beautiful.
And now we'll hear from Julia Clukey herself.
Thank you. It's an unbelievable honor to be here today. I have many people to thank, and so I'm going to work through that and then just share a little bit about sort of what drives my work and my passion for young girls in the state of Maine. So first, I want to thank Romaine for nominating me. It's a fabulous honor. I appreciate the work you put into it. The nominating committee, the selection committee for accepting the application and selecting me to be here amongst all the fabulous females that have come before me and be a part of this group. I'm excited to see how I can contribute to the mission here today. I want to thank my family, my mother, Cheryl, who's just been a phenomenal role model. I joked with when Senator Susan Collins, she said my mother's in there all the time. And that's a good story of who my mother is she doesn't let down on something she believes in. And I think that's passed on to myself, that when you believe something is right for a community or right, you don't stop using your voice in that way. And, I certainly have gotten that from my mother and her commitment to community and making sure that all people have access to what's necessary to have a great life. My older sister, Amelia, who's a middle school teacher and puts in the time every day, trying to shape young minds, trying to provide opportunities, often unnoticed, often late nights, and just an amazing person to look up to, the way she's committed to her students and committed to her community. And then, community partners, the Kennebec Valley YMCA, we've partnered for 7 years now to host camp. And when you find people that believe in your mission and support your mission and want to be a part of that project, it's exciting. And we've both been able to see what, there's no stopping, how many kids you can reach. I'll go back. I got involved in the sport of luge when I was 11 years old. And there's this word that I recently found which explains a lot of my youth. It's monokopis, which means the subtle but persistent feeling of being out of place. And prior to finding the sport of luge, that's sort of how I felt in my life. And when I tried the sport of luge, it was like something awoke in me. I had found the thing that I was meant to do. And when I think about young people today, I think there's a lot of young people that haven't found their place yet. And it's up to us as a community, to make sure we continue to provide opportunities, environments where they can try lots of things, where they can find out who they are, and they can find a place where they belong. Because finding a place where you belong and something that you're good at changes your life. I see it over and over again, what a difference it can make. And then when I think of the second part that drives me, why I partner with someone like the Y is I want to be in the communities where the need is the most. I want to work with partners that also understand, how can we tap into the kids, the young girls that haven't had access to programs like this? How do we find them and how do we bring them on board? And not to make reference to Cornelia Crosby, but there's this saying, you can, if you give a girl a fish, she'll eat for a day. If you teach a girl to fish, she'll fish for a lifetime, which is a great saying. But at the end of the day, you also have to give them the fishing pole. So there's the lessons that come with it, but you have to give them what they need to be successful. And so as I look of, with youth sports, with art, with music, how can we tap into our communities and make sure that all kids have access to those programs, have access to instruments, have access to sports, so that they can find their place to belong. And that's really, those are the two things that drive my work is how can we reach kids and give them the opportunities, and then how can we give them the tools so that they can go on and be their own Olympic champion. I was exposed to so much as a young person and found this sport of luge that I was loved, and I was given the opportunity to work really hard at something. And that's not something that every young person and young girl has access to, and that's what drives me. And I'm honored to be here today. I'm honored to keep working, to keep trying to reach young girls in the state of Maine. And last but not least, I want to thank Gabby and Savannah for coming here today, for sharing their stories, for spending time with me at camp, for allowing me to know them, to allowing me to watch them. And, when I see the young girls I've had a great opportunity to work with up here speaking, I know it's going to continue to trickle down. The generations that came before me that, fought for Title IX, fought for equal access to sports, we're going to continue to pass the torch. And my biggest hope is that wherever my glass ceiling is the ground floor for the next generation. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today, and onward we go. Thank you.
Just wait a little bit. It's my great pleasure to give you your official certificate.
Thank you.
And welcome you to the Women's Hall of Fame. And we also have a inductee pen for you. You may have seen other people wearing a similar one, but this one has inductee on the bottom. Makes a difference. Not all of us get to have that one. But didn't want to go through the material there. And we also have the copies of the additional letters that were not read from the governor and the other two representatives.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, that concludes this portion of it. I now turn the
Go back to the audience, and we'll have the presentation for Plymouth.
Emily, you can come up too, and Laura. And Bonnie. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marilyn Ladd, and I served this year as the co-chair and along with Linda. in this Maine Women's Hall of Fame. I'm also a trustee of the BPW Futurama Foundation and also serve as office manager. For the past 6 months, I've been concerned about the weather on this particular day. One almanac that I looked at said, good chance for mountain snow, mainly snow inland, and rain and snow on the coast. I'll take this cool and sunny day that we have. Our second inductee into the Hall of Fame is Cornelia Flyrod T. Crosby, a writer, promoter, natural resource advocate, and Maine's first registered guide. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce Bill Pierce, Executive Director of the Ranger Lakes Region Historical Society, who nominated Ms. Crosby for this honor and will serve as our moderator.
Thank you. I don't know what that was. Well, tough act to follow. Wow. As a dad, thank you. I was really moved. And your words also meant a lot. Thanks. I really think that's what the Hall of Fame is all about. Inspiration, recognition for great women amongst us. And it is a real honor for me to be here today, and on behalf of the Historical Society and the Outdoor Sporting Heritage Museum, which we run, we're so privileged that someone that is in our halls at the museum is now in your hall. And that would be the one and only Flyrod Crosby. That was her nickname. I would like to thank the university and the Futurama Foundation and the members of the Board of Trustees for the Hall of Fame for their hard work and efforts in maintaining this important institution. I would also like to thank the folks that helped get Flyrod the attention she deserved. And Commissioner Woodcock and the department, Bonnie and Commissioner Woodcock and Charlie, his wife, is here today from the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Thank you for coming. I also want to thank the congressional representatives for being here as well. I'd like to also thank the Maine Professional Guides Association for their letters of recommendation, the Phillips Historical Society, and the High Peaks Alliance that has built the Flyrod Crosby Trail from Phillips to the Saddleback mountainside. And we're going to work on continuing it down into Rangeley and eventually someday to the museum in Aquasic. I'd also like to thank King Montgomery and the folks at the Maine Sportsman for their support as well. So how fitting it is today that we would honor Flyrod Crosby. Crosby could be Irish or Scotch. I didn't research it. But into her rightful place in the Hall of Fame. As St. Patrick is hailed as the patron saint of all things Irish in Ireland, Cornelia truly is the patron saint of women's fly fishing, not just here in Maine, but nationally. You see, in Flyrod's time, nationally meant a whole different thing. You know, when I was first doing studies about Flyrod, and they said, well, her newspaper columns were published as far away as Chicago. And I thought, well, why did they stop in Chicago? Well, that would be because the rest of it out there, until you got to California, was Indian country. Maine was quite wild at the time. So Flyrod Crosby achieved enduring respect and national fame, and it came from very modest beginnings, rising in the outdoor world despite having lost her father at a very young age. Julia touched on something very, very important that's missing in our society, and that's men and women, young men and women and children being initiated into the outdoors and sports. Here's Flyrod at a time when women weren't even really participating in outdoor field sports, and she basically took it upon herself to go and do it. And she was told she needed to do that because her doctor said, Cornelia, if you don't spend a lot of time in the outdoors, you're going to die. You see, her father had died from consumption, which I believe is called tuberculosis now. And her brother died at age 23 of the same disease. She suffered from that her entire life, and yet she persevered, and she overcame that. She taught herself how to hunt and fish by befriending guides, and they took her under their wing and helped her. Not only did she have to overcome her sometimes month-long battles with consumption, but later she had to overcome a crippling knee injury. As an adult woman, she was hurt in a railroad accident, and it damaged her knee very badly, and she spent great periods of time on crutches. She also credited some of that with her really having to live vicariously through others and sharing by writing about the outdoors rather than experiencing it for herself as often as she wanted to. Because of her advocacy, as has been mentioned, she became the first registered Maine guide. And what people need to know is that at that time, for a woman to even be in the outdoors and to be hunting and fishing was beyond a novelty. Okay, women were relegated to domestic life, and a woman's place was in the home was really the axiom of the day. And she overcame all that because she knew the value of being outdoors. A writer in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, approached her one time during the height of her fame and said to her, Cornelia, do you really think, and she was constantly being challenged by the media, go figure, and do you really think that a woman can achieve the same things a man can achieve in the outdoors? And she says, not only can she do it, but she can appreciate it more because women are more sensitive and they can feel the beauty of the outdoors. How true that is. Through her vision for a better and more abundant life in the outdoors for all women, she was able to reach great heights as a widely published outdoor writer and a highly regarded outdoors woman amongst both men and women. As we look back at Fly Rod's achievements, I am most amazed by her undaunted spirit and willingness to fight for what she believed in. She also took great risks to do so. The law requiring guides to become registered by the state was not popular amongst the guides themselves at the time. So the very people that taught her and initiated her into the things she loved, she was now telling that, we need to have you registered so our guests, when they come to the state, are safe and they're well cared for and they're not taken advantage of by charlatans who are pretending to be guides. The certification to be a Maine guide is now amongst the toughest in the United States. And I would ask, how many Maine guides are present here today? Would you please stand? It's an honor and privilege to take people into the outdoors, and Cornelia, far ahead of her time, realized that this was going to be important. Between 5,000 and 6,000 registered Maine guides in the state of Maine now. Very, very important industry for our state. And it also protects the resource. This was a woman of immense vision. More still resented that a woman was a leading advocate of the law. Many of these guides were close friends of Fly Rod's, so it was a real risk for her on a personal level as well. Maine's Trout Unlimited Council Chair Kathy Scott had this to say about Cornelia in her letter of recommendation. Here is a model to men around her of what a woman can overcome and achieve, and to the women around her for what their lives could be. I've heard a lot of things about Fly Rod, but I heard a really great one today. Prior to the meeting, I went up and introduced myself to Julia. And she says, I really wished I could have met her. She sounds like a real badass. That lady right there would really appreciate that. So thank you. Later, when she was advocating in the legislature for some of Maine's first fish and game regulations to stave what was left of the precious resources she had so successfully previously promoted, and which that had suffered and a toll was being taken on them, she then stuck to her guns and said that, we really need to start protecting these things and making game laws. And she was a real advocate for that. Now, you need to know that Maine was filled with farmers. And to tell someone, and loggers, and to tell someone that they can't harvest on the wildlife on their land to feed their families was no small task. But she, once again, was a pioneer, way ahead of her time, and knew the importance. You see, in her lifetime, she had seen this resource around Rangeley of great abundance, which seemed inexhaustible, really suffer because people harvested everything that they were while they were hunting and fishing, because we were a consumptive society. Thankfully, that's changed now. So, like so many women in the hall, she was so ahead of her time. I'd like to share some wisdom for you from Cornelia herself that nicely sums up her feelings about the true love of her life, Maine's great outdoors. This is her words. Someone once said of love, "For people who have never known it, any description seems overdrawn. And for people who have, it is quite beyond description." This is surely true of a life out of doors, on the lake, by the laughing brook, in the wilderness, on the mountaintop, or in the valley. Why should not a woman do her share of fishing, hunting, trapping, and mountain climbing and ask no odds of men? You're right, she was a badass. The time is past, and she also said this, the time is past, I thank God, kind providence, when it was thought unladylike for a woman to be a skillful angler or a good shot. There is no more graceful, healthful, or a fascinating accomplishment for a lady than fly fishing, and there is no reason why a lady should not, in every respect, rival a gentleman in the gentle art. That was written in Fly Rod's notebook, her column in the Maine woods, February 21st, 1908. Bold, to say the least. Today, when I think about the great and accomplished community of Maine women's anglers, and you're about to meet one, I think first of their foremother, Fly Rod Crosby. So I'd like to introduce now a lady that throughout her long career in the outdoors, Bonnie Holding, has steadily earned a reputation of one of Maine's best guides. She presently serves as the Director of Information and Education at the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and like Fly Rod before her, she markets Maine's wonderful outdoors up and down the eastern seaboard. In 2008, she was recognized by Outdoor Life as one of the top 4 women guides in the nation. Fly Rod would be proud. Bonnie's many friends instantly recognize her at a distance by her trademark braid of strawberry blonde hair, a memento of the days when her 4 brothers teasingly dubbed her the ugly redhead. It's not true, not in disposition or her looks. She credits her good fortune to growing up with 4 brothers, an experience that taught her a lot about dealing with men. Bonnie began her love for fly fishing when she met her now retired husband, Blaine, 38 years ago. Is that correct? Did I get that right? 40 years ago. Blaine is one of my closest pals, and I like to kid him by saying that he is known as Mr. Bonnie Holding, and that he is the second best fly caster in his family. Geez, I have fun with that. Bonnie was the first woman employed at L.L. Bean's Outdoors Department, where she honed her casting skills under the direction of renowned angler Dave Woodcock. Soon she was giving casting clinics herself. Sometime before Bonnie arrived at IF&W, Field and Stream printed an article declaring Maine's licensing of guides the toughest test in the U.S., and Bonnie has held its highest ranking of master guide for 28 years? 32. I must have written this 4 years ago. Flyrod would be so proud. Flyrod would be impressed. Despite her many achievements in the field, Bonnie considers her involvement with Casting for Recovery her most satisfying accomplishment. This national program allows women recovering from breast cancer to meet in remote settings and learn about fly fishing. For over 30 years, Bonnie has helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars and spent untold hours teaching these wonderful women to cast, catch fish, and just forget that they are sick. In the true spirit of our inductee, Bonnie Holdy, ladies and gentlemen.
So as soon as my face calms down, I'm not quite as red. Thank you so much for letting me be here to talk about kind of one of my heroes. To say that I'm honored to be standing here to talk about Cornelia Flyrod Crosby is kind of like the understatement of the year. I wonder if she knows, I'm kind of hoping she does, how much and how many ways she brought about change in Maine and beyond. As a young woman given a prescription of a large dose of the outdoors, what does she do? She could have been like any of the other women of that time and just sat back, maybe do a little needlework. I can't even picture myself doing that. Or working in a bank, working in an office. I've done the office bit, wasn't quite for me. But instead, she headed to Rangeley, just north of her hometown of Phillips, and got her large dose of the outdoors. Working locally, making friends with locals, learning to fish, hunt, and camp. Learning to fly fish with a bamboo rod given to her by a well-known rod maker, Charles E. Wheeler, and by writing stories to entice others to come and enjoy the fruits of the land around her. And with that fly rod, it is said that in one day she caught 100 trout. I'm going to believe that. Because there are days I've not got quite that far. But along with writing for the Phillips phonograph, Cornelia also worked for the railroad, writing not about the railroad, but about the places the railroad could bring you. And this was a wonderful step in the direction towards creating tourism. The railroad understood the impact of tourism, as did Cornelia. She understood the need to bring hunters and fishermen to the state for economics. Bringing more hunters and fishermen to the area would fill beds, fill restaurants, and employ people in the region, and fill seats on the railway. She not only wrote fine tales for the railroad, but convinced the railroad company to bring a cabin to the second annual New York Sportsman Exhibition in 1896 at Madison Square Garden. She had a log cabin built and then taken apart so that it could be put on the railway to bring to Madison Square Garden. And she brought with her all the fixings that would be on a woods cabin and brought that to the show. So there was all the pots, the pans that you would be cooking with, the rifles, the guns, the whole thing. And if you ever get a chance, there are some wonderful pictures at the Maine State Library. And I'm sure that Bill has them at the Outdoor Center. Cornelia understood the need to stand out for the exhibition. She dressed in a mid-calf hunting skirt and leather jacket, which caused quite a stir. So to bring your skirt up above your ankles, that was like, oh my God. She was already a renowned hunter, fisher, and writer here in Maine, and by causing quite a bit of a sensation, she drew people into their exhibit and could exude the wonders of Maine's wilderness. Cornelia attended this show for a few more years, along with a show in Boston. It was at this show in New York in 1897 that she heard the news that guides would now be licensed in Maine. And Cornelia Crosby was given the first license, and I believe it was out of the respect for the work that she had done towards licensing of guides and her conservation ideas. I myself didn't grow up hunting or fishing. I have 4 brothers, as Bill mentioned to you, and I like to tell people they are little short guys. They range from 6'1" to 6'5". I'm the miniature one in the family. And they like sports, but the sports were baseball, basketball, soccer, and football. So I started to find out about this outside stuff when I started dating my husband, Blaine, in high school. I didn't need to get a prescription for a large dose of the outdoors, as I already enjoyed it, but simply found a new way to enjoy it.
When we decided to try fly fishing, I had been fishing for a while, but with a spinning rod. It took us a while to start catching fish again, but I think we conquered it. You think? We fish with Bill sometimes. I went to work for L.L. Bean. My only claim to fame is that I was the first woman to work in their hunting and fishing department, so that did create quite a little bit of a stir. So it wasn't quite the standard of getting the first official guide's license, but it was kind of neat just the same. I didn't realize just how unique it was until I left employment there to move to the Stratton Eustis area for my husband's job as a game warden. It was then that I learned that the woman who hired me at L.L. Bean's had almost lost her job over it. And just before moving, I took and I passed the Maine Guide's license test. I applied for and passed what was then called a General Guide's license, which included hunting, fishing, and recreation. This is now called a Master Guide's license. I never thought in a million years that I would use it. And I have to say about this, the day that I came home from taking that test, my husband also never thought I would pass it. And he met me at the car all ready to console me and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, dear." And he says, "So how'd you do?" I said, "I passed it. I got all 3. "What?" So it was kind of nice to get that reaction. But as I said, I didn't really expect to ever use it. It just made us credible on the sales floor at L.L. Bean's, and that was going to be the extent of it. But when we did move up to Stratton Eustis, there isn't a whole lot of employment up there. So I ended up guiding full-time for 28 years in the summer. I started guiding for a private sporting camp, and again was the first woman to be a full-time guide in this camp. At this point, I had not heard much about Fly Rod Crosby. I had an inkling of who she was from when I worked at Bean's, but not too much knowledge. It was living and guiding in an area that she spent her time in that I began to hear more about her. I felt that I was taking a trip into history when I guided on some of the ponds and rivers that she fished or hunted. And I can honestly say some of the paths that she walked in, I walked. And every time I would do that, I'd like, wow, there's so much history, just in this piece of ground right here. It was, people had been fishing and hunting there for over 100 years. So it was very cool to me to be able to do that. When the legislature recognized the 100-year anniversary of licensing of Maine guides, I was invited to be in Augusta with some of the other guides. What was interesting is that when we were introduced to the groups, both the House and the Senate, several hands went up, and they recalled that their grandmothers or great-grandmothers or aunts had been guides in Maine in and around that same time. So I'm guessing it was an okay way to make a living, and you do what you have to do for your families. Women were fly fishing then, not a ton. There were photos here and there showing women in the guide boats and with rods. Most of my sports were, and still are, men. But I guided one woman for almost 18 years. She started fishing. I don't want to lose my place with my finger. She started fishing when she was 7 years old. And she came from New York City. And they would bring her, initially they brought her for the summer to Maine because of the polio outbreaks. And they wanted her out of that atmosphere. So they would take the train, I believe they took the train to Montreal, took another train to Lake Megantic, and then took a buckboard from Lake Megantic into the club where they would end up, near the Chain of Ponds area of Maine. And to think that, her age, she's 96 now, and to think that she remembers doing that, was really incredible. But the other interesting thing about this is that she learned how to fly fish from her mother and her grandmother, not from a father or grandfather. It was her mother and grandmother that taught her. The family belonged to this private fishing club and actually were original members since 1887 when the club was formed. She was another woman who would rather fish and eat fish than do anything else. And when I guided her, it wasn't for the typical 1 or 2 days that you now see, as guides. People just do it for a weekend here or a day here. She would come for 10 to 16 days. That was a long trip. I can honestly say that was a long trip. She was my hardest sport for years. All the other guides would laugh and say, "Oh, you've got a woman, you've got it easy." But she was the hardest person I guided because she didn't start her day early. She didn't start crazy early, but she would stay in the boat all day till dark. The only time she'd get out of the boat is that pee break. Other than that, she'd eat a sandwich in the boat. She said she wasn't there to socialize. She was there to fish and to bring fish home. So it was kind of like she was prior to the catch and release thing. She didn't see any point to that. She thought she had to eat every fish that she caught. As she got older and I got older, The days got a little bit shorter, and the weather started to play a part. So where before it didn't matter if it was raining or snowing or just blowing like stink, she was there to fish. So it did get a little bit easier, that she would say, okay, we don't really need to fish from 2 to 4. We'll take a break, and then we'd go out and fish till dark. But I think what that says is that if you had an interest and someone to show you the way, fishing was available even then, and I think even more so today. Today, we still attend several sportsman shows a year: Georgia, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New York, and of course the Maine shows. I've been running around the state in the last 24 hours for that. And look where she began. What a great idea to bring others what we have to share here in Maine. And we still look to the sportsmen and women to come to Maine to hunt, fish, and recreate. She saw the importance of the economics of tourism even then. She knew you needed to fill beds, restaurants, and keep guides busy to keep a community going. Another thing she knew and fought for was the conservation of the product we do have, setting in motion limits on fish and game to preserve this important heritage of our state. I feel because of her forethought, I have had the opportunity to make a living guiding during this fishing season and now promoting the state's fisheries, wildlife, and other outdoor pursuits. So do I see a little bit of correlation to what she did and what I do? A little bit. I wasn't the author she was, for sure. But I do, in a very small way, see that, a guide and fly fish, and really fishing is my passion. It's kind of a little bit of an understatement, but just being able to sell the state, in a sense, and the tourism of it. The Rangeley record said after her death, Rangeley has lost one of its most famous people, and America has lost its most famous woman sportsman. May her soul rest in peace. Cornelia Flyrod Crosby has left behind and been part of Maine's history. She is a true inspiration to women and sets an example for young girls to strive for and do what you love in life. Make your own dreams possible. She has left a legacy of her belief, and if you take care of the resources, they will take care of you. My hope is that she is smiling down today at this great recognition, not that she is being recognized so much as how many she has influenced both before and after her death, and how the work she did then is part of what we do now. Just incredible history. Thank you.
Good job, buddy. Thank you. 100 fish. It's true. Flyrod Crosby was asked once at a sportsman show by another prying member of the media, give me a primary difference, or tell me a primary difference between men and women anglers. And she chuckled and said that, well, women will never lie about their catch. So you heard it. It's a real honor to introduce our next speaker. Emily Willett, will you come forward? Emily is a descendant of Flyrod Crosby, and a lady that wanted to be here today, Kathy Scott. Today in Bethel, there's a fly fishing show, and the theme of the show is fly fishing women. So it was difficult to get Bonnie to come here. There's so many women over there that want to be right here because of this, because fly rod meant so much for them ever since they were little girls. And Kathy Scott said this. She's the president of Maine TU. That's men and women, by the way. The Maine Council of Trout Unlimited. One needs only to look to the last child in the woods and the No Child Left on Indoors movement to see that today's children need role models from across time to shore efforts to get them back outdoors. In Maine, we are lucky to be an outdoor-oriented state, and we are especially lucky to have historical figures for young women to look up to, like Flyrod Crosby. So, our next presenter, Emily Willett.
Hi, so I'm Emily Willett, and I'm a freshman at Mount Blue High School, and I'm here to represent the family of Flyrod Crosby. My mom's uncle David was invited to speak here today, but he's retired and vacationing in Florida. Uncle David has a University of Maine degree in wildlife management, though, and is a registered Maine guide in fishing, hunting, and recreation, so it would be entirely appropriate if he were standing here instead of me. I happen to be earning some qualifications along those lines, too, though. My brother Mason and I go ice fishing and hunting with our parents. I have shot my first deer, as well as a number of turkeys and ruffed grouse. So is Mason, for that matter. We do eat them, of course, and I'm accustomed to navigating the wilds of Maine. Now let me tell you how I'm connected to Miss Cornelia Crosby. She herself had no children and has no descendants. Her mother, though, is, or was, my first cousin. I never knew how these relationships worked until I began learning about this relationship right here. You see, Cornelia's mother, Thurza Porter Crosby, had a grandfather, Ezekiel Porter, a Revolutionary War soldier who made his way to Farmington in 1790. This Ezekiel Porter was my sixth great-grandfather. You may also be interested to know that Cornelia's mother had a cousin, Lieutenant James Porter of Strong, Maine, who was killed at Little Bighorn along with General Custer. Thurza's father, Flyrod's grandfather, had a sister, Eliza Porter. She was my fifth great-grandmother who married Zebediah Sweet in 1836, and that's the line I came from. My Aunt Laura has something to say about that connection in a little bit. Eliza Porter Sweet was then Thurza's aunt, Cornelia's grand-aunt. Eliza Sweet was also Lieutenant James Porter's grand-aunt, so I have the same relationship to him that I do to Flyrod Crosby, which is to say that we are second cousins 5 times removed. So as I said, Flyrod's mother was my first cousin, and the child of a first cousin beyond your own generation is your second cousin, and that's how I'm related to Flyrod Crosby. The names are really confusing in those generations right there, by the way. Thurza with an I in the middle had an Aunt Thurza spelled the same way, but Cornelia's middle name, Thurza, is spelled with a U in the middle. Also, Cornelia's great-grandfather was Ezekiel Porter, but so is his son, Cornelia's grandfather. We have it all verified in the official Porter genealogy book right here. I note that we spell Flyrod as 2 words. There is a trend lately to jam words together and make a compound word out of any 2 words that we commonly use as pairs. I'm glad to see that the Hall of Fame has not fallen into that practice. I can't help but thinking how it must have felt for Cornelia Crosby to realize that her cousin died with General Custer. When it actually happened, Cornelia was 21, and it was contemporary news, of course. It probably took a long time for the news to reach the family back home in Franklin County. As she grew older, though, the Battle of Little Bighorn became legendary, and by the time Miss Crosby was an old woman, there were already movies and books about it. Among the things that my family has kept is this postcard from 1909. This is something that Flyrod Crosby actually held in her hand, and I now hold in mine. No one would actually applaud the subject matter in the picture on the card, but it is authentic, and Cornelia didn't choose it herself. It was mailed to her. We preserve it as history. Now here's a summary of her fame and influence that Uncle David provided. Cornelia first discovered her love for the wilderness when, on the advice of her doctor, she left her job in a bank to seek a large dose of the outdoors. This prescription brought her from Phillips, where she was born, to Rangeley, where she found housekeeping work in the large hotels in the area. She became friends with the local guides, and from them she began learning the lore of the woods and the pleasures of camping, hunting, and fishing. When she was 31 years old, a friend presented Cornelia with a 5-ounce bamboo fly rod. She became so adept at fly fishing that she once landed 200 trout in one day. She began to write up accounts of her fishing adventures and submitted them under the name Fly Rod to O.M. Moore, the editor of the Phillips Phonograph, one of the local newspapers. "That's mighty good stuff," the editor wrote back. "Send some more right away." Fly Rod's notebook became a widely syndicated column appearing in newspapers in New York, Boston, and Chicago, and the pseudonym stuck. Although she was the last person to legally shoot a caribou buck in the state of Maine and ultimately became the state's first licensed guide, she was also Maine's first public relations genius. She arranged an elaborate hunting display at the first annual Sportsman's Show in New York's Madison Square Garden, starring herself, rifle in hand, and she, wearing a daring knee-length doeskin skirt. In the years following that, she brought her outdoor show to the events along the East Coast. She became friends with Frank Butler and Annie Oakley, who visited her in Rangeley at least once. Her sensational appearance at the sportsman shows, together with the popularity of her syndicated column, helped to attract thousands of eager outdoor enthusiasts to the Maine woods. Thanks to the narrow gauge railroad that ran all the way from the Maine Central Connection in Farmington all the way to Rangeley, people were able to reach what most might agree was the best that Maine had to offer. At her urging and in deference to her influence, on March 19, 1897, the Maine legislature passed a bill requiring wilderness guides to register with the state. Maine registered 1,316 guides in the first year. The honor of receiving the first Maine guiding license went to Fly Rod Crosby. As an outdoors woman myself, I'm humbled to find myself in the shadow of this famous Maine woman.
She'd be very proud of you. Good job. Glowing with pride. The next person to speak about this wonderful lady, another family member, Laura Harris. Aunt Laura.
Or Auntie Laura, as Emily used to call me. So I'm Laura Woodbury Harris, and I live with my husband Jeff in New Sharon. My daughter Lydia lives across the road from us with her husband Christopher, and my granddaughter Gemma, who you've all seen running around here. David Woodbury, whom Emily mentioned first, is my brother, and Emily is a granddaughter of my other brother, Charles Woodbury. We are all first cousins of Thurza Porter Crosby, Flyrod's mother. I've lived in and near Farmington since I was 3 years old. My father was Victor Woodbury, who grew up in Livermore Falls and around Farmington as well. Dad's grandmother was Goldie Sweet Hines Jensen, who died at our house in Farmington when I was just about 5 years old. I mention her because Grammy Goldie was a contemporary of Flyrod Crosby, as well as a second cousin just like us. I never heard mention of our famous relative when I was growing up, but Grammy Goldie and Cornelia Crosby surely would have known each other. Cornelia lived from 1854 to 1946. Goldie lived from 1882 to 1969. Altogether, their paths intersected for 64 years. Goldie lived in New Vineyard, Fairbanks, and Farmington. And Cornelia, when she wasn't traveling far and wide, lived in Phillips and Rangeley. The Sandy River and Rangeley Lakes Railroad connected them. In fact, the railroad ran through the pasture behind Grammy Goldie's house in Fairbanks, and my dad would tell of running down to the pasture to close the gates behind the train after it had come through. I understand that it's hard for the next generation to relate to anything like that. Jeff and I raise cattle, so I know what it's like to run close to the gates. I also know what it's like to live alongside the Sandy River itself, to watch coyotes and deer crossing my backyard, and like Emily, to take long walks in the wilderness. Emily mentioned Eliza Porter Sweet, who was Flyrod Crosby's grand aunt. I have something here, not the original copy, but it's a poignant little poem. You can maybe barely see the handwriting from there, that Eliza wrote to her son, Andrew Jackson Sweet, when he decided to go a-wandering at the age of 16. Andrew Sweet was my great-great-grandfather. He was born in 1837, and in the last month of Andrew Jackson's presidency, and was the father of Grammy Goldie, whom I did know. Andrew did come back from his wanderings, which included gold mining in California, where the story goes he shot off part of his foot. But his mother knew he had returned, and before she died, he married at the age of 43. The next year, Eliza died, and the year after that, Grammy Goldie was born, named perhaps in remembrance of his adventures in California. Those of us in the family who live in Franklin County now, or who did at one time, all know the lure of the gorgeous hills and forests of western Maine. David, my brother, however, chose to be a guide in the Katahdin region. It was central to Flyrod Crosby's career to attract paying customers to Maine who wanted to fish or hunt, or just to go canoeing or kayaking, because she understood too well how perfectly suited Maine was to those adventures, and still is. It was also important to her that people, mostly men at the time, who served as guides did not spoil the experience for their customers with unfitting behavior or a lack of wilderness skills. So she lobbied the Maine legislature to set some strict standards and to require that anyone accepting payment for guiding customers in Maine's wilderness be licensed according to those standards. As a result, Maine guides ever since then must meet what are regarded as the most rigorous guide licensing exams in the country. It doesn't come easy, and you've heard that like 3 times now, so we know it's true. Today, a registered Maine guide can be licensed in fishing, hunting, or recreation, or a combination of those skills, and my brother holds all 3. But Maine now also licenses guides for 2 other specialties, sea kayaking and tidewater fishing. Whitewater guiding, which you've also heard of, is a specialty within the recreation category. A Maine guide not only knows how to get you where you need to be for what you want to do, he or she knows the laws that apply, is an expert in using a map and compass, plans for weather, has prepared for every kind of hazard and unexpected event in the wilderness, brings along or caches extra water and food, often provides meals for everyone, brings all necessary gear for the activity, which can include camping gear, keeps a safe, clean vehicle and a well-maintained boat and motor, keeps all other necessary equipment in ready condition, is a role model for ethics of conservation, is well rehearsed in dozens of stories, jokes, and even songs to brighten a slow day, knows the answers to thousands of trivia questions that guests may ask, and manages the business end of guiding, licensing, taxes, and insurance. Today, there are about 5,000 guides licensed by the state of Maine, a large number of them women, although I couldn't determine an exact proportion. About 400. Awesome. Some do make a living solely by guiding. Others own and operate wilderness lodges or sets of camps and earn a living by combining guiding and hospitality services. Often the entire family is engaged in the enterprise. Many more, perhaps most Maine guides, are employed in one occupation that pays the bills and offer their guide services as a second job or sideline. I know that my brother David is very grateful to cousin Cornelia for taking the lead in this profession and for inspiring what he wants to have engraved on his tombstone. I had the best job in the world. I got paid to go fishing. Thank you.
I too at this time have a certificate to present to you in behalf of the late Cornelia Flyrod Crosby. And it says it's been nominated by William Pierce, Executive Director of the Ranger Lakes Region Historical Society.
That's terrific. And this will go in the exhibit, so you all come up and see Flyrod in her exhibit.
Yeah. And we also have the inductee pin that you can.
Oh, and that'll go right next to her silver tea holder.
And we also have the copies of the letters from
Oh,
Governor
terrific.
LePage.
Thank you so much.
Shelley and Bruce Pollock.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Can you give it? Flyrod Crosby.
Thank you very much, everyone that has come today. We, over the years, have honored 49 outstanding Maine women. Some of them are educators, community leaders, authors, congressional leaders, but they've all been mentors to Maine women. And I invite you to visit the Bennett D. Cates Library across the way, where there is a display of the photographs and the citations on each honoree. On behalf of the trustees of the BPW Maine Futurama Foundation and the Maine Women's Hall of Fame, thank you so very much for being with us today, and may you have a safe travel home.